we got us a 1944 double aught 18, 2 zeros, 18. Whoa. This is in good shape, but someone at some time or another put a really, really, really big bridge plate overlay in this guitar, and I'm going to show you the video or the pictures of that here in just a second. Well, here's what you need to look for when you look at the pictures of that thing. They just took that overlay and flopped it on over the bridge plate. My gosh, it doesn't touch the top or anything. It's completely worthless, except, I mean, you know, usually they put something like that in there to correct the belly or something like that, which is dumb because, you know, it's a lightly built guitar. You need to have light gauge strings on it. It's going to get some belly because it's scalloped, and you're going to see that when you look inside of it. Putting something like that over the bridge plate is dumb because I modify a lot of guitars, but I try to keep the aesthetics of the thing. And this bridge plate overlay does not fit my sense of aesthetics, as well as choking the guitar to death. My gosh, if you want to prevent the belly, just fill it with concrete, you know? Anyway, take a look at it. But what you would look at when you see the pictures of it, which you're going to follow this, notice how it's just sitting on top of the bridge plate. And they tried to bend it in or something like that. I don't know what they're trying to do there. Anyway, customer sent it to me. Some other repairman was scared to get the bridge plate out. And being that I've taken out hundreds of 70s bridge plates, he asked me if I wanted to tackle this. Well, I feel sorry for a 1944 triple aught 18 that's choked to death by this monstrosity in there. So I said, yeah, send it to me, and I will do my best. So take a look at those pictures, and then after that, I'm going to show you the process of removing the thing. All right. Normally, with a 70s bridge plate, you know, they're about an 1/8 of an inch thick. And as you can see from this one, it's thicker than that. This thing, it could be 1/4 of an inch thick. I mean, that's a thick plate. I'm not sure if my normal technique is going to work really good on this, but I'm going to give it a crack anyways. And so normally what I do with the 70s bridge plate is I soak it for, you know, a couple of hours, half a day, or whatever I want. And what I found the best thing to do is just use one of these blue utility cloths. I've used to use sponges, but then I realized, you know what, sponges absorb the water. They don't let it soak. What I want it to do is soak into that bridge plate and get the glue weakened so that I will have to use less heat when it comes time to loosen it. Now, this plate is so thick, I'm not sure the water is going to soak through like it normally does on a 70s plate, but I'm going to try it anyways. Plus, it'll saturate the plate so that when I do go to use some heat, that'll steam it. It'll go through and steam the plate off. It'll help. So here's what I'm going to do. Well, this is going to take some. This is going to be a several-part video, you know, obviously, because this is one of those things you're not going to do in one good shot. You're going to have some prep and things like that. But done right, this plate should come out pretty good. So I'm going to get this towel, and it's pretty wet, because I'm going to put it on the bridge plate, hopefully not touching braces or anything. This is hide glue construction, so if it does get wet and get loose, it'll be easy to re-glue the braces. So what I'm doing in here is I'm reaching here with my hand, and I'm finding that bridge plate, which fills up the entire little space in there. And I'm going to press that towel down, and I'm actually going to squeeze some water out of it. Okay, and you'll see this. I'll stick the camera in there again before I actually go to take it out, and you'll see that it's wet. So I'm going to squish that down there, get it where I want it. I'm pushing down on the towel to squish water out, and we're going to leave it. It's upside down. Water's draining out. It's going to get that bridge plate nice and wet, and that will help. If it doesn't loosen the glue up right away, like I said, it'll help a lot when I go to hit it with heat. First thing I did when I looked at that, and you can look at this when you look at the pictures, when you've already looked at them, find out what kind of glue it is. Because if it's epoxy, we're going to have a much harder time with this. But what I saw was the yellowish looking white stuff, and it looks just like a regular Type Bond glue. So water is going to help a lot on that. The water will help soften that up a little bit. Not totally, not like hide glue, where if you soak hide glue in water long enough, it'll actually just come apart, kind of. Type Bond's not as sensitive to water, but it does help. And I think what happens is it's not really the water per se, but it's when you hit it with the heat, then the water makes a steam, and the steam carries the water a little bit better than if you try to just use heat and put it on there. You're relying upon the heat transferring between objects. Whereas if you hit it with steam, the steam is actually heat. And I had that question one time back in high school, and I took advanced placement classes, English. I took advanced placement science, English, physics, science, English, physics, and I think math. I can't remember. I just took a bunch of advanced placement classes. Anyway, and back then I didn't have hearing aids, and I had a lot of trouble in class hearing things. I don't know. I just was a teenager, and I wasn't very smart, But anyway, I remember the physics teacher, after giving his little lecture about things, he said, so which one would give you a worse burn? And what were our choices? I know it was hot water versus steam. And the whole point that he was making was that the more energy that you put into it, then the more energy comes out. So steam takes more energy than hot water, right? Because you start with this, and it's cold water, and then you heat it up and it starts boiling, but then you heat it more and it starts steaming. So there's more energy put into the steam than there is the hot water. So theoretically, steam should burn you more than hot water. And so he asked that question, which will burn you worse, steam or hot water? And I said hot water. And I hadn't thought of, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't get the concept. And no, the answer was steam. But I know now, 50 years later, I know what I was thinking. And I was thinking that there's a density factor too, because the steam is obviously a lot less dense than water, because it's up here floating around. It's a vapor, and the water is liquid, and the vapor has less density than liquid. So my thinking was that if you stuck your hand in that hot water, the density of it is going to affect the burn too. Rather, the steam, I've got my steam needle shooting out over here when I'm doing neck resets, and I can pass my finger back and forth through it all day long, and it won't burn me. It will if I hold my finger over it. But even so, I've been able to kind of hold my hand over steam for a little bit. It doesn't do anything. But I stick my hand in boiling water, and I'm getting burned. And I know that because I've spilt boiling water on my hand before. It's, burned, which was a worse burn than steam. So, it's funny because it took me a long time to think of what I was thinking of, but my concept was that there's a density that's factoring into this too, and not just the energy that's put into it. So I believe I'm correct on that matter, is that you could get burned. There's also a time factor, so I think hot water is going to burn you worse than steam if you go and stick your hand in it. So, now, there is more energy and the steam has more potential to, but the density is going to matter too. So there's two factors going on there. So you can tell me what you think in the comments. Anyway, point of all that being is that I think that's what happens when you wet the bridge plate down. It's not necessarily that the water itself makes that Type Bond weak. It does to a little bit, but when you hit it with heat, it creates steam, and that steam goes up and carries the heat with it, and that gets out into the corners of the glue, and that helps. Whereas if you just use heat, you're relying upon radiant heat all alone. So there you go. You know, it's like the difference between going to a spa and just standing up next to the rocks. It's warm, you know. But if you get in there and you pour water under those rocks and you get the steam, then you really get it, you know. It's the spa effect. Not like I go to spas all the time. I'm too busy and don't have any money and blah blah blah. And golly, I mean, they're kind of weird, you know. So there's your story for the day. I'm gonna let this soak overnight, and I'm gonna come back in before I go to bed, before evening, replenish that time. I'm gonna let it soak. And the other thing that soaking does is gets the bridge plate wood weak, because it'll weaken the wood and it makes it a little bit more flexible. When you bend the sides of this guitar, you steam it, and then you form it over the shape. So it does make the wood more pliable, and that's going to help when I go to pry that plate off of there, is it'll pry off and be pliable. And if you've ever done this, the difference between trying to get a dry bridge plate and one that's wet is really pretty dramatic. And I'd rather work with the pliable one because it kind of bends down away from the glue rather than just snapping. So there's a lot going on here wetting that bridge plate. But when I started doing it about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I got much, much more aggressive about soaking that bridge plate than I used to. I have seen no damage to the top. I have seen no situations where wetting it was a bad idea. Like I said, if any of the braces get loose, that's fine. I go and then put some glue in there and glue them down again. I'll have to do that anyways, you know, because when you put heat up against there, if there's any sort of loose brace happening, you're going to loosen it up. So I always check the braces anyways. So that's not a concern for me because, you know, I'm going to take care of that. That's a very minor and easy thing to take care of. But I've gotten more and more aggressive about wetting that bridge plate down. This one is so big, so thick, so massive, and so poorly glued that I'm going to really soak this thing. And so I'm going to let it sit overnight. Whatever it takes, you know. Tomorrow I'll start poking on it and prying on it. If I think it needs to sit some more, I'm going to let it sit some more. But tomorrow is when I'm going to come in here and start really trying to get this plate down. So, sleep well. Man, this is a nice guitar. I mean, it's got the original tuners. The neck's in really good shape. It may have been oversprayed, but if it was a terrific job. I see some wear here. And 1944, you know. This is a sweet little guitar. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the age of this thing, the condition it's in, and just the moxie that a 1944 brings to you. That's a wartime Martin. It's just a travesty to have that monstrosity. That's pretty good, huh? It's a travesty to have that monstrosity of a bridge plate in there. We're going to fix it up, and we're going to get it sounding like, going to give it its potential back. So I guess I'll check into you later. Next day. Let's see how we're doing with this thing. And I did what I said I was going to do, and I came in before I went to bed, and I got that wet some more. Stuck it back in there. I'm going to take a look, and then we're going to stick the GoPro in there and give you a look. And, because I got to look first before I show you guys, just in case there's an issue. But it looks pretty wet. Let's put the camera in there. Get some light first. What you're going to look at as you go in there is look at the glue, and you will see that the glue is now white, which means that it's absorbed moisture. Getting dust out the camera. The glue is white. What I'm looking at is where I'm going to get my chisel to start prying on this thing. So I'm going to send you in there and take a look at it. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the camera off my tripod. I'm going to put the camera in there, and we're going to see if I can show you what it looks like when I'm in there prying around. And I'm going to get a chisel. Where is it? There it is. I'm going to take this chisel first, and because it's angled up, and I'm going to try to see if anything's going to pry loose. I'm going to do that without putting heat in there first, and we'll see what we get. So we'll see you inside the guitar. Well, here we go. We're going to heat this bridge plate up and see if we can get this thing out now. It's going to be tricky. I hope the GoPro gets it. So here's what we're looking at, just in case we don't. Looking at the bridge plate in there. Got a mirror in there. I've got a rag up here that's cool. It's been in the freezer for a few minutes. And I'm going to slip this GoPro in here, and we're going to see what we get. GoPro's kind of in the way, but there it is. There we go. It's a good shot. But what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to wash this. So I'm going to soak it a little bit more, and I'm going to go get my rags really cool again, because it's going to take a lot of heat to get back there into that corner, and that's where the finish usually bubbles. And I've got just a little bit of heat sinking going on right here. I'll show you. There, this is actually a flat spot right here where I probably have my palm down holding it. But that's a little bit of heat sink, and I don't want to push it. Now, this is a vintage guitar, obviously, and it's had lots of time to gas off. So I don't anticipate it bubbling, but it is sinking a little bit right there. So we don't want to get it too hot. We're going to stop right now and go cool these rags down again and get some more water in there. And now that I've got it loose right there on that edge, I should be able to get water back up into there a little bit better. And it is soft, but this is not an easy bridge plate removal. A lot of guys pass on it, you know, and it's kind of tempting to take the back off and work on it, but I don't think that's necessary. I think I'm just being patient here. Keep soaking it, keep eating it, keep cooling it. I think it'll come off eventually. I know it'll come off eventually. We want to get it off without causing any damage, and I'm pretty sure we can get it. So just got to be real super patient. If you're not patient, don't work on guitars, let me tell you what. We'll be back. All right, the plate's been soaking for about 4 hours now. Really wet, so I think it's gonna go, and we're gonna get it out now. It's 9 o'clock at night, but if it doesn't move and doesn't start moving like I want it to, I'll back off of it again, put some more water on it, soak it overnight, come back in the morning. But I see a lot of white in there, and we're going to put the camera in there, and then you're going to see that. And I see the white glue, so that means the water's gotten to it. Plate's already half off, you know. I just hesitated because it wasn't coming off as good as I wanted it to. And I needed to go in and get those wash rags cool again and things like that. So I just let it soak. And plus, it was a Supercross race on that I needed to go watch. So, you know, like I said, you got to be patient with this thing. And it seemed like the right thing to do was to soak it a little bit longer. It's been 4 hours, though, maybe 5 hours. So I put the camera in here and then get my rags and all that stuff, and we'll see what we got. All right, here we are the next day. Whatever day it is. Yeah, this is day 2 of working on this. Maybe day 3, whatever. Anyway, the bridge plate is out. I want to talk about this bridge plate a minute here. What they tried to do, of course, is they tried to reduce the belly in the top of this lightly built 1944 triple out 18. The braces are fully scalloped. You've seen the pictures inside there. They're fully scalloped. This is, and they're thin braces. This is double out, triple out bracing. It's 1/4 of an inch wide rather than 5/16, and it's scalloped. This is probably the lightest bracing that Martin makes in a steel string guitar, meaning not a Civil War guitar, you know, that's intended for gut string. This is light bracing. This guitar is not ever intended to handle medium gauge strings. It's not that guitar, nor does it need medium gauge strings. Light gauge strings, let this top bloom. It does not need. So it's going to develop a belly of some sort, a little bit of a belly. That's not the end of the world. The belly is only an issue. It's only a problem if it's a problem. Don't create a problem by putting medium gauge strings on. So I suspect that's what's happened here. I've seen this before many, many times. As people get a little bit of a belly back there, they don't understand that this is scalloped, light bracing. This stuff is light. So they go and they stick stuff like this in here. This is a particularly bad approach because this is a piece of, as far as I can tell, maple. And you can see the grain lines in it here, and it's just a wavy, indistinct, terrible grain line here. I can't flex this, but if it was thinner, I would be able to flex it this way. So what they've done here is they put the grain line this way, and the only thing that does is fold up. Okay, let me get a piece of spruce here. This is a piece of spruce. First of all, this entire piece of spruce weighs less than this plate. So, keep that in mind. Now, the spruce, if you take the grain this way, it flexes very easily this direction. So if you run it like this with the grain going across it, it just folds up. You can see how easily that folds up. I don't want to break this piece. Man, that would do nothing. But if you run it this way, which is where the top grain runs, it's stiff. Look at that. So you would be so much better off if you thought you needed to do this to make a spruce overlay that would, have your bridge plate inlaid and that kind of thing. And I've done this on guitars where maybe the bridge sheet's damaged really bad. In fact, I have a little video on this. It's called Repairing the Bridge Sheet. I think that's what it is. If I can remember, I'll put it in the link here. But I've had guitars, Martins, where say they had an impact on the bridge and it punched right through the top so that the entire front of that bridge was cracked. And that's bad news because that's which way the stresses go. The stresses go forward. So if the front of that's not supported, cracks through, you got problems. And I repaired that. It's been 20 years now with this, taking the bridge plate out and then using a spruce overlay on there to basically create a new top underlay. It's an overlay, but it's on the inside, An overlay so that you have fresh spruce running here. That gives the bridge a support that's not going to crack through. Use hide glue, fish glue, something like that. Man, it bonds on there. It's about as close to welding wood as you can get. This is a piece of wood that's got hide glue, and I'm doing a test on it. And I mean, that's welded. So you use hot hide glue on the inside of that and do it right. And you've welded a new piece of spruce on there that's strong, it's light, and it's stiff. And like I said, this entire piece of wood weighs less than that little piece. And by the time you cut a little patch off of there, it's going to be so light, and it's spruce, so it sounds like the guitar. It doesn't sound like a big, massive piece of maple. So that's why using a big bridge plate to control belly is a bad idea. And that's why I don't like the 70s bridge plates, and I think that's a poor solution if the tops are really statistically thinner and if they are statistically less stiff. Because that's really the key, is are those tops less stiff? The thickness does not correlate to stiffness. Yes, a certain piece, if it's thicker, will be stiffer. But between pieces, I can go over there and get another piece of spruce off of here, and the thickness is the same, but the stiffness is going to be different between those two pieces. So, point is, a bridge plate is a very poor way to control top belly. So this is really bad because it doesn't pay any attention to the grain. It's a poor piece of wood to use for this solution. The idea, the concept was okay, but the execution was poor, very poor. So if I felt that this top needed support, and I don't think I did because it's a standard looking top, I don't see any damage in there. We're going to use light gauge strings on it. It'll be fun. But if I felt the need to reinforce the top, I would use a piece of spruce. I would run the grain this direction, and it would be very stiff. And by the way, this is what I do when I remove popsicle braces, is I make I had one here just a second ago. Right there. Trapezoidal brace that's bigger than this. Now, and it fits right up under here. and it's wider than the sound hole. So the ones I make now are a little bit wider than this, but I use this as a template. I mark it here, and then I scoot it over here and mark it here, so that it's wider than the sound hole, so that this force transfers onto this grain, which is a solid piece of grain, and doesn't end at the sound hole, because this isn't a solid piece of grain. It runs over here and goes punk and falls into the sound hole. But this piece over here is strong. It runs the entire piece of the length of the guitar. So you take a trapezoidal brace and you come up under the fingerboard like this, and you have a very solid support to where that neck block cannot move forward because it's braced against the sound hole brace. Plus it's got the entire glue support at the top, and that's a very, very strong system. Much stronger than the Popsicle brace, in which they run the grain this way. So all the Popsicle brace does is fold up and slip, and it still allows slippage with enough force. But if you put a trapezoidal brace like this under the fingerboard, it cannot move unless there's a catastrophic failure, which anything's going to fail at that point. But this is how I repair guitars that have failed Popsicle braces, and I've repaired some that have caved into the guitar. They've broken so bad here, and the neck block has moved so much that they cave in. The binding's bent, everything's bent. You gotta take, you don't have to take the neck off all the time, but I like to remove the extension. You use the neck as a leverage to bend it back there, get everything straight. You pop one of these in there, glue it in there, and I might make it, fairly sizable here. We're trying to repair a broken guitar. Anyway, so this illustrates the exact same thing, and this one is wrong, by the way, if you're paying attention, and that's why it's my template, because I wasn't paying attention, and I accidentally cut it with the grain running the wrong way. But this is my template, and when I put this template on, I make sure that I get the grain the right direction, and I have it marked on there, check the grain. So I would cut it out of this piece of spruce. All right. So that's a little bit of talk about why this is a bad idea, this plate here. This is a bad idea. Plus, it's heavy. It's going to choke the guitar down. It did not do what it was intended to do. It was a poor execution of someone's perceived need to strengthen the top on this wonderful little lightweight 1944 double-aught 18. Now that we've got this monstrosity out of here, we're going to check the guitar out here. And I want to look for loose braces, because it's possible that the guitar had a couple of loose braces, and that contributed to the belly, and maybe they weren't skilled enough or patient enough or whatever to find those loose braces. So what I do, get myself some feeler gauges here, and this is a 03. You can probably cut underneath braces with that. I mean, it's thin enough. But I like this one here. This is a 08, a 10 or something. This is my initial probe. This is an artist's palette knife, like the one I just put up. And I just cut it off and sanded it off and that kind of thing. It's very stiff, short, it's easy. It's really good for probing braces and putting glue in. So before I actually string this up and call it good, I'm going to come inside here. I can't put the GoPro in here, but what you do is you basically just come up against the brace like this, and you push on it and probe and see if this will go underneath there. If I find a loose brace, I'm going to stick the GoPro in there and show you what they look like. But what I'm feeling for here is I'm feeling for the finger brace. Your X brace runs this way. Your X brace runs here, and there's some finger braces right here. The chronically loose place is always at the bridge. They come loose in a section of the X brace about right there. So what I want to do is I want to feel for that bridge area, and I want to check, see if there's any loose braces going on. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll reach in there and find that. I can find the bridge plate. There's the bridge plate. I got my finger on it. So I'm going to flip my finger on the opposite side of the brace, and I'm just going to probe a little bit with this thing. You hold it flat to the top, and you just kind of slide it in there. And you don't have to force it, because you can force that brace apart. Now, yesterday I thought I had one. I thought I had a spot. And I've got a spot right here that I don't. It doesn't feel solid to me. So I'm going to come back in with this 03. Try that again. Actually, I have a 03 already rigged on a piece of wood. Yeah, that's it. And this one, I think is a 6 or 5 or something like that. This one has that hole in it, which is where it was attached to the feeler gauge. The hole is really useful for pushing glue because you'll push glue with the front, but then the rear, the hole will also pick up glue. So it's like a double scoot. You know, you're pushing glue on the front, and then the hole is really just another leading edge out there, and it'll get more glue. So these with the hole on it are really good for pushing glue. But I'm gonna take that in there and probe that. Now these braces are glued with hide glue, and soaking them in water, you know, may have, when I was soaking the bridge plate, may have loosened some. So there's one that's stuck. Now I'm going to take my mirror, pop it in there, and let's see what we got. Let's see if it's really a loose brace, or if I just have pushed it in there hard enough. I'm going to call that possibly a loose brace. I'll show you. Let's get the light over here. Magnetic. It picked up everything metal on the bench. Now the thing with this is it's right at the bridge plate, which means there's only so far I can push it because it hits the bridge plate. We'll take a look at that. Let's go look at it right here, right now. Get all these cords untangled. Okay, there it is. You see? Right there? And it's going in under the brace. But I can't push it too far because the bridge plate's actually right there. I'm going to call that a loose brace. And the way I'm going to fix that is, instead of using hot hide glue, because you can't heat that brace up and you can't really get it in there. In other words, use hot hide glue. You've got to heat the hide glue, you've got to heat the wood, and you got 15 seconds to do it all. So rather than use hot hide glue and not really be able to do it the way I want to do it, I'm going to use fish glue, because fish glue gives me a much longer working time, and it will also bond to the hide glue that's in there. So and it's not going to hurt to put a little fish glue in there and reclamp it, believe me. Anyway, I'm going to probe around on here, see what else I can find. The really good news here is that bridge plate is in great condition. There's no cracks in it. It's not really worn. I believe we're using non-slotted pins already. That's really good news. So I won't have to do anything there. So I'm going to probe around a little bit more, see what I can find, and then we're going to push some fish glue in there and get it clamped up, and then I'm going to leave it for a while. And then I think we're going to be about ready to string this up and actually listen to it. Also, before I go, I want you to take a look at my hat. Kimsey Knives. This is my son. He's got a knife making business, and you should go Google it and take a look at it. Kimsey Knives. He's on Facebook and Instagram, and he builds absolutely amazing knives, which I knew nothing about and didn't teach him anything, and it's all on his own business. He makes his own Damascus steel, very high in demand knives, and he's 21 years old, which I think is a pretty good accomplishment for 21 years. Check it out, Kimsey Knives. All right, so I'm going to get this, and we'll be back. Well, I left the SD chip upstairs, and I put my GoPro all together, and I don't want to take it apart off the stand. So we're just going to do this very quickly on my phone, just to update. Here's the guitar. I glued 2 X braces, and they weren't real loose, you know, but it was easy to do. I don't know what else this guitar needs, so let me lay this straight edge on here real quick and see. We might possibly be looking at a neck reset. The straight edge hits right on the edge of the bridge here. And while that's not a definitive test, it's a marker. And I'm fairly certain that when I put strings on this, the action is going to be too high. The saddle, is pretty low. So I bet you we're looking at a neck reset after this. But I want it to stay strung up for probably 2 or 3 weeks now that I've removed that hunk of useless wood. So I'm going to put some strings on it, string it up, and we'll see what we got. And I will check back in a minute. Let's see what gauge strings we have on here. I didn't put them on. I'm reusing the strings. And those are well under 56. Yeah, these are lights. That looks like about 11 down there. I don't think they are. I think they're lights. But, man, the frets look really good. I don't think it's going to need any fret work here. The nut looks really good. Everything looks great. I just think it's probably going to need neck reset. And it's had one before because it's got the shim under the fingerboard, which, you know, a lot of people like. But I can see it there, and the fingerboard's fat at the end. And I'm not a big fan of the shim. If it's in there, it's great. I'll leave this one alone. So we'll tune it up. Well, we're going to need neck reset. Action's pretty high. I'm going to measure here. But just real quick on my phone, which is going to not be great, but... it's going to sound good when it gets done. I mean, you know, it's going to sound terrible on the phone. I will do a later video on this with it in front of my real microphone and all that kind of thing so we can hear it. But like I said, it's going to need to sit for about 2 or 3 weeks for that action, for that to settle in before I do a neck reset. Feeler gauges. And yeah, this is high, man. That's 115, 125. More than that. Whew. Okay, that fits. And that is so many feeler gauges, I've forgotten how many. 125. 125. You need to see probably 93 on this instead of that. Let's just call it 95. So 125, 90, 95. That's 30 thousandths of an inch. So that's 60 at the saddle divided by 3 is 20 thousandths of an inch. 20 thousandths of an inch off the heel. It's not a radical neck reset, but it is necessary. 30 thousandths, 60 thousandths. I haven't got 60 thousandths at the saddle. It's probably 60 thousandths of an inch tall right now. Let's see. That saddle is 100 thousandths. So if I drop it 60 thousandths, you're going to have 40 thousandths of an inch saddle. And there's no way that's enough. I'd like for this to be about 125 or 110, something like that. So if I just reset the neck to that saddle, we're ahead of the game. But it needs a neck reset. So that's coming up. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. And the next time you see this guitar, it'll be post-neck reset. And I'll be doing a video on it. The top looks really good. Where I was talking a little bit about heat sink. No, you can't see anything. You get a little bit of discoloration right here. But that's going to go away over time. And it looks like somebody's arm. I mean, it's nothing, you know, compared to having that huge bridge plate in there. So that looks really good. And we'll see ya. One last thing. I suspected that somebody put that piece of wood in there because the top is belling. But right now, I mean, look at that. That's beautiful. I mean, there is no distortion going on. There's nothing going on here. There's no funny humps. Nothing. There's a little bit of a dip right there that I will keep an eye on, but there is nothing abnormal on this for a 1944 1/4 inch scalloped bass guitar. The bridges on there really good. Everything looks great on that. So there was no need to have that chunk of wood in there. So now I will keep an eye on that though, and that's one of the reasons I want to leave it strung for 2 or 3 weeks before I do anything, because I want to see, make sure that top doesn't distort or anything funny. But I don't see any indication that it's going to. So I just wanted to add that on there. That top looks fantastic. So bye.